So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us here at the Ludovica Festival at this panel discussion titled National Interests Above All, Security Policy in an Age of Uncertainty. In a time of shifting alliances, growing instability and strategic ambiguity, the question of how nation-states protect and prioritize their interests has returned to the center of political and also military debates. Our panel today will explore how national security strategies are adapting or should adapt in this unpredictable environment. Before starting it all, let me introduce our distinguished speakers. Colonel Jean Hogard was born into a family with strong military traditions and served 26 years in the French army as a paratrooper officer in the Foreign Legion and Special Operations Command. He retired in 2000 as a colonel after participating in several operations in Africa and the Balkans, most notably in Rwanda and Kosovo. Since 2005, he has served as the founder and president of EPE, a strategic intelligence and corporate diplomacy consultancy. He is the author of 3 books. And Dr. Attila Demkó was born, a research fellow at the John Lukács Institute here at the Ludovica University of Public Service, where he leads the Strategic Futures Research Program. He holds a PhD in history from Eötvös Loránd University and has a background in political theory also. Previously, he was the head of geopolitics department at Matthias Corvinus Collegium, served as the director of defense policy at the Ministry of Defense, and was a national security advisor at the Prime Minister's office. His work has been recognized with several honors, including a presidential award for his contribution to NATO in 2014. So both our distinguished speakers are highly honored and experienced. About myself, I am Blanka Kovács. I'm currently the political advisor of the State Secretariat for Circular Economy and Climate Policy, but my research background is in international security, focusing on sustainability and Central Asia. So we should begin with a very broad question. Thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts with us. In the recent years, many assumed that the liberal security order would provide long-term predictability. And instead, we've seen a term and a return of hard power politics. How would you describe the current state of global security from a national strategic partnership and perspective, if you may?
If we have to describe the current state of global security, I would say is clearly a highly sensitive and fragile meaning. We are today on the day anniversary of the victory of 1945, 80 years after the end of the Second World War, and a fragile peace. Particularly in Europe, let's not forget the conflict in former Yugoslavia, which dislocated this Central European state a lot of years ago, between 1991 and 1999. 1999, the year of the war unleashed by NATO against Serbia, on the grounds that the latter wished to retain control of its province of Kosovo-Metohija in the face of a rebellion supported by foreign countries. There are a lot of things to say about. Today, I think this global security is clearly under threat. Hotbeds of war and tension are multiplying and even worsening. First and foremost, of course, is the war in Ukraine, which has been going on for more than 3 years now, wreaking havoc in both material and, above all, human terms. The losses are innumerable in terms of destruction of infrastructure, of course, but also deaths and also serious physical and psychological injuries. This war, on my advice, would never have taken place if it hadn't been wanted, failed, conceived and planned since the fall of the USSR by the United States, according to Brzezinski doctrine, which failed to understand that the international situation had changed radically with the end of the Soviet Union and the advent of a Russia turning its back on communism and returning to its deep roots. And this war would never have happened if Great Britain, especially embodied by Boris Johnson, if Great Britain hadn't added fuel to the fire, and if the European powers, Germany and France, unfortunately in particular, had played a truly moderating role. Today, with the war mania gripping the leaders of Western Europe, notwithstanding their true national interest, which implied not taking sides in this war, but doing everything to bring the parties back to negotiation, it's clear that the security of the whole of Europe is under threat.
Please.
I absolutely agree that we are in a critical and very fragile situation. And then there are a lot of mistakes. What the colonel said, I agree that definitely mistakes were made by the West regarding both Russia and, let's say, China. I think we were naive about China, and we misread. We didn't really follow what Russia said, because Russians said in 2007, Mr. Putin said very clearly what will happen. And if we are wise, we will listen. So I think we were in a hubris mode. I would call it the crisis, the Ukrainian war and the Russian aggression is also the war of hybrises, the hubris of the West, not listening to Russia, what Russia has to say. I think the hubris of Russia, not really understanding the strengths of Ukrainian nationalism, and in a way, a hubris of Ukrainians who really believed in 2022 that Russia can be defeated. And now, 3 years later, we all pay the price of our misjudgments. Of course, unfortunately for the Ukrainian people, they pay the biggest price. But this shows very well that even at the highest level, with the best intelligence, you can make enormous mistakes. That's what happened in Iraq. And why does it happen? And that's the only advice I can give you as officers, and maybe some of you will be advisors or even decision makers. Always have somebody who tells you differently. Who is the devil's advocate, who debate you. And that didn't happen in Russia, it didn't happen in the West, and it seems it didn't happen in Ukraine. Because we went, everybody went on the way which seemed easy and believed in its own strengths. And now we are in a situation where nobody will win. And that's the tragedy of it. But just to add to what the colonel said, one more thing. It's not only about decisions of people, of Vladimir Putin, of Boris Johnson, of Volodymyr Zelensky, but there is also something else. So we are in this very volatile, fragile world because we have mega trends, big trends which are also pushing many countries towards conflicts. And we have, in some parts of the world, mostly in Africa and the Middle East, huge, really, really huge rise in populations. Africa is doubling its population in 30 years. And if you double from 1.2 billion to 2.4 billion, that's a recipe for crisis. Nigeria will double its population from 200 million to 400 million on a territory only less than twice as the size of France. And France is the biggest country of Europe, but still it's 600,000 square kilometers. Nigeria is 10 times Hungary, 930,000 square kilometers. Can you imagine 400-something million people? And it's an oil country. What will happen to the oil revenues when we electrify our cars and our systems? So Africa is definitely going to this direction. Europe has a problem with population implosion. So population explosion in some parts of the world, population implosion in other parts of the world. We have the rising China, and the rise of China really changes the international system, and the international system is under pressure. Like with the rise of Imperial Germany before the First World War, the rise of Nazi Germany and Japan before the Second World War. Bad things can happen. So that's number two. And of course, we have climate change, which is putting overall pressure on the system. So we have 3 systemic causes also for these wars. But in the case of Ukraine, I fully agree that it was the war of hubris, of too much self-confidence, and of not listening to the devil's advocates. Maybe there was somebody in Moscow, if we look at what happened 3 days before the invasion of Ukraine, I mean the 2022, there was a openly broadcasted talk of Putin with his leaders. And that Sergei Narishkin said that maybe we should negotiate the West still, and Putin said, no, this is not the question. Yes, sir, this is not the question. So answer what we should be. Yes, yes. I don't know if you saw this. You should watch it on YouTube. This tells you quite a lot that there was some internal debate within the Russian system, but Putin said, no, I'm right and you are wrong. And this is the danger. If you don't have somebody who is the red team, who tells you that you are wrong, or at least who gives you a different idea and a different option. And unfortunately, what I saw during my career with the Americans, twice in Afghanistan and Iraq, they didn't listen to the red team. Those who were criticizing the ideas of this very crazy war in Iraq were sidelined or even lost their careers. They were kicked out of, generals lost their positions. So what I want to tell you that we are in trouble because of our own blindness, and we are in trouble because of some really bigger changes in the international system and in global security.
Yes.
I fully agree, of course. Yeah.
You mentioned a few megatrends that are shaping Europe, and we have to mention, of course, the war, but other pressing issues. What do you think are the most pressing security issues here in Europe, and how can we adapt to them? Please, Colonel.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, of course. So, like also Mr. Demkó mentioned a lot of pressing issues Europe has to face. But what do you see as the most pressing security?
Most pressing.
Yes, yes, yes.
About security.
What are the yes?
I think there are different topics. In fact, of course, there's the risk of being no longer able to control internal security. For us, it's very evident in France today. There's, of course, a danger that goes with it. It's, societal developments, creeping Islamization, determined to do away with the values of our Christian societies as civilizational drifts, such as wokeism and so on. I think globalization plays a major role, major destabilizing role in all this. It's about wiping the slate clean of the past, eradicating the identities of nations, and gradually replacing them with a non-identity common to all, and doing so in an authoritarian and voluntarism manner. In so doing, globalization obviously attacks the fundamental freedoms and democratic foundations of our societies. I think it's my own advice, of course. It's a result of a threefold desire to do away with the names and authorities of the three fathers: the father of the family, the father of the nation, and the father of the heaven. In short, I believe that the most serious challenge facing European nations today is to be submerged and dissolved into a dehumanized, meaningless rule. In other words, to lose their soul after their traditions, customs, cultures, and values have been destroyed. The strength of a city lies neither in its ramparts or in its ships, but in the character of its citizens, so said the Greek historian and strategist Thucydide 500 years before Jesus Christ. Nothing has changed, and that's why losing our soul is the first of the risks that must be known, identified, and fought if our own European nation, steeped in history and culture, are to survive. This is one of the fundamental reasons, as you will have gathered, that why I have a great distrust of these two supranational organizations I named NATO and the EU.
So I think, yes, it's very important for Europe to regain, European countries, European nations to regain their, let's call it, fighting spirit. It's one thing to have good equipment. It's one thing to have a lot of ammunition. And it's the other thing to have the will to fight. And you know what Ukraine war showed? Ukraine would have fallen without the will to fight in a few weeks. But the Ukrainians had the will to fight. If you look at European societies, we were taught for 35 years, you know, but the time of peace, the army is a bad thing. We shouldn't do this just for peacekeeping. We lost our edge, but not only the military edge, but also the edge in the spirit. If we look at how many Germans or Dutch are ready to fight there for their own country, this is under 20%. So Germany can be the biggest country in Europe with the biggest economy, but if 17% of Germans are ready to fight for their country, what is the German addition to the defense of Europe? I mean, and they don't even have the tanks. Somebody told me, I don't know if it's true or not, that Germany has not only not the tanks, but the issue of ammunition, 3 or 4 days of ammunition in terms of if the Russians would come. Okay, the lucky things for us that the Finns and the Poles are not like that and they are neighboring Russia. In Finland, there is still the spirit. In Poland, there is still the spirit. But we have to rediscover the spirit that we are. It's a worthwhile, Europe is a good place. It's worthwhile to defend our homes. Our countries are good places, not to focus on the bad things in our history. Every country has a bad thing in the history. But somehow in the last 30 years, it's true for Hungary that this happened, that yes, a lot of bad things happened in Hungarian history, like in every country's history. But just not focus on this. Focus on that it's a good place, we are not bad people, it's worthwhile to defend. And you know, this is starting to happen in Europe, but no, the most, let's say, those who want to fight Russia the most, they did the most to undermine the spirit of Europe and the spirit of nations in Europe. And this is, okay, I'm happy that there is a change in many countries and many circles in this, but we are a bit late and we shouldn't have destroyed much of this spirit in the last 35 years, let alone the arms. Because what we did in the last 20 years is so irresponsible. Many countries had large amounts of stocks, from tanks to self-propelled artillery, to everything, and they just sold it, scrapped it. Hungary was one of the countries which scrapped a lot of, or sold a lot of weapons, ammunition, and and we are in this situation because of this. We are in this situation of weakness, of 3 decades of mistakes, and now we should stop digging. We were digging for 30 years, now stop digging, rearm, but not only rearm in steel, but rearm in mind. So that's what I think is needed. And I'm hopeful that this is going to happen. And yes, what the colonel said, there are internal problems. Because some European countries has to focus on their own streets with soldiers sometimes. Because if you go to Brussels, to the capital of Europe, you will not only see policemen. Sometimes there are soldiers. And you know why? Because Jewish community was attacked here or there was a shooting here or there. This is the capital of Europe. And you have security situation after security situation, and you need the army. So what I say that we have to tackle the things as they are, based on reality and not based on ideology. You are very young, you didn't live during communism. Sometimes I listen to some experts from certain circles. I listen to you know, explaining the word by my teachers before 1990. The word is not ideological. The word is based on facts, and we have to return to this. And the one fact is, if your country is weak, it's more likely to be attacked, and that's what happened to Ukraine. Ukraine was attacked in 2014 because it was weak, and it was attacked in 2022 again because the Russians thought it was weak. It was much stronger by 2022. So this is the thing we have to change in Europe, not to be strong both in steel and in mind.
And also in our age, the risk and the threats are coming in a lot of ways. Like, we just have to take a look what happened last week in Spain and Portugal. Like, we are in the age of digitalization, and this is a huge risk. So security issues are not coming only from military-related reasons. But talking about what national interest means, like, this panel refers directly to national interest, but what exactly do we mean under this, and how this expression evolved in the last 10 to, I don't know, 20 years, because a lot of issues and threats changed Europe's perception of peace.
I will be very politically incorrect. I think the notion of national interest had evolved for the last few years, maybe 5 years or 10 years, as a result of a strong push towards globalism in general, and supra-state European federalism in particular. The first step was, for me, the COVID-19 crisis, which is, I think, a good example. It was a clear demonstration of the desire to subject states to a set of supranational rules on the pretext of efficiency and public health. In my view, these rules are highly prejudicial to fundamental freedoms and the sovereignty of nations and states, of course. But not only on a health point of view. Similarly, in Europe, the official today unanimity in favor of Ukraine against Russia, initially under the impetus of the American administration of Biden, then now of Brussels, may have provoked reactions dictated by common sense in favor of nation or national interests. In France, this notion of national interest has, hélas, declined steadily since General de Gaulle's time, with the occasional burst of energy that deserves to be applauded. In 2003, the former Prime Minister at the time, Dominique de Villepin, refused to obey American orders to go to war in Iraq. At the time, Villepin based his decision on his justified view of the national interest. Was the interest of France to go in that war in Iraq? No, and he had the courage to say no. Today, I had loved to see the same logic applied by Mr. Macron to the European Union in Ukraine, for instance.
Well, if I look at Europe, I think if there is one country that still thinks in national interest, that's France, compared to many others. I think in France there is still the spirit in many ways. Many other countries are lacking, at least from the outside, it seems. Maybe France could be more like during the de Gaulle's time, but still, I think France is a good example in many ways, because Monsieur Macron at least had different ideas. I listened to him several times. He changed in the last 1 year, but I think the Russians did something against France so there is a reason, because I listened to him 2 years ago at GlobSec, and Monsieur Macron was very rational and very different from the Americans and the Brits on Ukraine and on general approach to the world. So, but
At the beginning.
At the beginning, for sure. But I want to say that, yes, so national interest is not a bad word. It shouldn't be a bad word. Of course, we have to see that certain issues are beyond nations. So climate change, we have to fight climate change. We cannot do it alone. It's an issue. Maybe it's not as a direct and immediate threat as some shows, but you know, I can see with my eyes that there is climate change compared to 30 years ago. The Budapest climate is different and warmer. So it's very hard to debate. What I would like to see in Europe, that we can put European interest and national interest and global interest on the same footing. It not necessarily goes against one against the other. But if you put, let's say, European interest regarding Russia or regarding Africa, I mean, it cannot be the same. For France or for Portugal or for Spain, they will look to the south, to the Mediterranean more than to the east. I mean, for Estonia, Russia is a direct, clear danger. And of course, we have to understand the Estonians. And we have to be in solidarity with them. But it shouldn't be that we look at everything through the eyes of Estonia, country of 1.2 million, and sacrifice our interests based on what they think. You know, in the case of Hungary, to give up Russian oil and gas, every year would mean a loss, a net loss. It's a net loss of 1.5 to 2 billion US dollars. 800 million foreign loss per year. That would mean to replace it with something else. I mean, this is not logical. And I understand Estonia, I understand Latvia, I understand their history, but they should understand, for example, our history and why minority issue in Ukraine is so important for us. So we have to, European interest, NATO interest, yes, but it shouldn't be like one size fits all, one direction for everybody. Again, let's have a debate. That's what I said. We have to have a debate. Let's not put the others who are devil's advocate, who have different opinion, to the corner. Like today, if you don't agree, like Monsieur Macron was going a bit differently from the European opinion on the war, because he said that we have to negotiate with Putin. I remember it, Globsec 2 years ago, he was like this distance from me. He had his speech, I was like, wow. He was the only person to have a different opinion from all. If we act like a herd in Europe and we are just running into one direction without questioning, that's a problem. And that's where national interest and national ideas has to come in. Otherwise, it's whose idea is this? I mean, who will lead Europe? Can Europe be led from one center by a non-elected bureaucracy? So these are the questions. And these are very important questions if you really want to see a working Europe. Because I think Europe is important. Maybe we have a bit of NATO is important. But it cannot be without the member states. It's like it's not the club is for the members and not for the members for the club. And we are a bit like approaching it different, that the Commission in Brussels thinks that the member states are for the Commission. No. Ursula von der Leyen is my employee, is your employee. We are not his or her employees. I don't know if you understand what I mean. We shouldn't look at Hungarians, we should follow something. We should debate what is logical approach. And if you have a different opinion, you can have an opt-out. It's not against Europe to have an opt-out. It was part of European heritage that if some country doesn't want to join something, it can have an opt-out without stopping the others to do what they want. It's not a problem. Some countries have an opt-out from Euro. Okay, they will never introduce the euro. We have to, because we joined after. Okay, we have to follow. We signed it. One day we will join the euro. But let's say with common issues, common approach to Russian gas and oil, that's a new thing. Why we cannot have an opt-out? For the other 25, because the Slovaks will opt out too, you can bet on it because they don't have any other choice. So you understand what I mean, that it shouldn't be like 100%, 100%. Not 100% national interest, not 100% so-called European interest. We have to find a way. If we don't find a way, and if we are forcing countries to go one direction, this is going to lead to the end of the European Union. The Brits left because of this. And we lost a lot with the UK leaving, because we lost, France is the strongest military power of Europe today. We lost the other one. Germany is nowhere near to these two countries. These are nuclear states. So do we want to lose more countries in Europe with this approach? NATO is much better in many ways. NATO was much more careful and considerate. I worked in NATO, that NATO was much more. But don't go down this lane, because this is not the lane to have the national interest. It's not above, together with the interest of the alliance or the European Union, together. And those who don't want to follow a certain path, please, we don't follow, you do, and we opt out.
You mentioned before a few security developments here in Europe, but talking about perceptions, how do you see, how have developments like the Ukrainian war and other megatrends reshaped the national threat perceptions in France and in Hungary?
Please repeat.
So how do you see all these trends and developments and security issues change the national threat perception in France?
Of course, yes. I think this war in Ukraine, and it's it's like a big bulversement, a big, such the right word. We at the beginning of this war, we were restrained. We have an attitude of more diplomatic and balanced position, and then the position of Mr. Macron evolved more and more, and we take sides in this conflict. I think, but it was under the pressure of American administration at the time, and then now, and under the pressure of the European Commission, we can name Ursula von der Leyen, for instance, which is the motor of this position today. And I think it's for us very dangerous. It's a matter of dividing the French unanimity, the French cohesion. A few days ago, I participated to this resolution, which was given to the Senate and the French Parliament in Paris for making the senators and members of Parliament more courageous. Nobody approved the military engagement in Ukraine today. It's a decision, unilateral decision of the French government without any support of Parliament. So we are now 20,000 former officers and non-coms, but two prestigious army generals who signed this project of resolution. It's very important for us not to allow the personal decision of the President of the European Commission or the President of France. We have to talk about these very important decisions. It's a matter of security, a matter of stability, a matter of protecting democracy and our values. So I think they are in danger today.
So about Hungarian view, Hungarian national interest, if you look at the last 20 years, what changed? That's a good question. one issue was really something, at least we knew that, for example, migration is an issue. We were working in it in the Ministry of Defense and together talking to Foreign Affairs, all the guys, before 2010. But for me, and I was still in the Ministry of Defense at the time, 10 years ago, this was a real surprise how fast it came. And this is definitely an issue. I mean, if there are 100,000 people knocking at your southern border, you cannot say it's not a security issue. And actually, in 2015, we had a French-Hungarian negotiations, defense policy director negotiation, and I was bringing the news about some phones we intercepted, or we actually got the phones of certain people who crossed the border, or national intelligence agencies got them. And there were things on the phone which showed that these are jihadist guys. So we went to France, in Paris, to tell the French, and also some others went to other countries, that guys, something is happening with this crowd who crossed the border. It's not only refugees from Syria, but there are some people who don't want to do terrorists. And you know, we had the negotiations in Paris, in a beautiful building. Actually, it was very near to the border of Paris, which is a big highway. It was a very nice meeting. I really loved everything, except this, when I started to say this, the French, oh no, it's not important. And Bataclan happened, I think, a month later. And some people who crossed through Hungary were involved in the attack, which killed like 140 people in France. And after that, the French, my French counterpart, before that we were not visible to the French. After that, every conference he came and well, you know, but there was a different approach to Hungary because we told before it happened. So, but come back to Hungarian interest. I just wanted to say this memory, Jesus, it was 11 years ago, I think. Wow. We live in a world, what we believed is the world of Hollywood. But it's not the world of Hollywood, this is reality. So this is reality, what's happening in Ukraine. Have you seen what happened in Romania? Just this weekend, Mr. Simeon got 41% of the vote. This person organized a physical attack against the Hungarian community. He made his career based upon anti-Hungarian sentiment, and he was talking on it. And possibly the president of a neighboring country will be somebody who is working with certain people who are not very nice, to put it that way, to put it politely. And, you know, this is an issue for us also, the security of the Hungarians in the neighboring country, the security of our border. And what was like these scenarios from Hollywood 10 or 15 years ago can be reality tomorrow. And this is the issue in your jobs, you have to see that nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. And to think out of the box and to prepare for some contingencies which are not likely, or you think it's not likely, or you will be seen as a strange person to say this, it's better to prepare for something which doesn't happen. Of course, you cannot prepare for all scenarios. I'm not saying this. So you cannot, if the Mars attacks, that's not a scenario I would prepare for, okay? Anyway, what could we do if, you know, three-body problem, I don't know if you follow this series, if the people come from, or if invaders come from Alpha Centauri, that's not a scenario. But there are other scenarios we have to prepare for. So that's what I think changed in Hungary, that we started to become more independent thinking. Because I have to tell you that before 2010, Hungarian thinking was to read the French national security strategy, the UK, the German, and copy-paste, copy-paste. That's Hungarian strategy, that we read the strategies of others and we copy-paste. And there are issues, okay, we didn't copy-paste, let's say, the Hungarian, we don't have much interest in the Southern Indian Ocean, France have, or the UK has. We didn't copy-paste that one, but otherwise, There was no thinking in this country, any independent thing I can tell you before 2010. It's not about politics, it's about approach. Maybe today we have too much independent thinking. That's possible. I'm not saying that. But this is very important to think with your own brains. And I think this is the thing what happened in the last 10 years in Hungary, or 15 years. That's what I saw during my career, that at least there is a way of course, if you are independent thinking, you can make mistakes independently. That's true also. So generally, that's what I would say. And there are new threats to our country, to this region. And the biggest threat is, of course, if the Ukrainian-Russian war doesn't end in a good way, or if it escalates. But just one more thing. We have the conflict in India and Pakistan, which is now, okay, a few bombings here, a few people. I don't want, but this is not a big war. Can it be a big war? Not very likely.
Two nuclear powers.
Yes, it's two nuclear. It's not very likely because they are nuclear powers that it's going to be a big war between the two countries, since they both have mutual assured destruction. Both have the same amount of nukes. Okay, the Indian is a bit better. They have the full nuclear triad, so they are more prepared. They have subs. But what I want to tell you, it can affect us. It can affect us if there is a nuclear war, which is highly unlikely, but it can happen. The issue is not only the radioactivity. The issue is decreased yields for agriculture in the world because of the decreased the sun. So, is it like something from a bad movie? Maybe. But we have to really think a bit more out of the box. And I'm hopeful that we are thinking more out of the box, because if somebody tells me in 2007 that there will be a war in Georgia like this in 2008, I said, oh, come on. The same with Ukraine. And now we have to really be more flexible and more, let's say, open to ideas.
Thank you all. Unfortunately, our discussion is coming to an end, but very quickly, could you please mention some underestimated risks that you believe we should be paying more attention to?
Some difficulties.
I see one thing, because we are really there are natural disasters. So like 3 or 4 years ago, there was an explosion, a volcanic explosion in Tonga. I don't know if you remember that, when an underwater volcano exploded, and it was like the size of a large country, the cloud. But it was not, we didn't feel it here in the Northern Hemisphere. If there is a volcanic explosion like Tambora in 1815, 200 years ago, at the end of the Napoleonic Wars, it could be a global event. And we have to prepare for such events. So we have to change our mindset. We have to restock our food stocks. Really, we have to change our very, very optimistic mindset about the future, because these things happen in every few hundred years. These are not from a spectrum or not from this. This is real. These things are real. And these things, natural events, are also can be a threat globally or locally. And we are just in a way, we are so optimistic about technology, about forecasting. The Tonga explosion was not forecasted, because we cannot forecast underwater volcanoes. The volcanoes, bigger, we can forecast that something is happening and we can have a preparation. With underwater, undersea volcanoes, we cannot do this. And some of you maybe are smiling that this is not serious. This is that serious, that such things happen. Such things will happen, maybe in not my lifetime, but in your lifetime. Very likely that such a big global event will happen, which will affect all of the world. It can be a volcano, it can be a meteorite, it can be many things, and we have to prepare for such scenarios with preparing ourselves, with having enough food in our storages, with enough water, with having a strong army, because if you don't have a strong army, somebody may take your food and water. It sounds like something from, I don't know, something from a Hollywood series, but these things do happen in every few hundred years, and we are very lucky that in the last 200 years, since the explosion of Tambora, such things didn't happen.
Colonel, please, your closing remarks.
Well, I'm not sure to follow with precision the discussion. So you want to...
what do you think might be the biggest risk we underestimate?
Risks.
Yeah.
The biggest risks. That's so a lot of people these past months spoke about nuclear war. In fact, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think there are a lot of arguments which played for, you know, it's deterrence, nuclear deterrence, but not nuclear weapons using. I think what are the main risks today are more the moral weakness of our countries face to the whole battery of cataclysms and difficulties, political difficulties, social difficulties, moral difficulties, and so on. We have geopolitical risks, as we say, about some hot zones in the world, like India and Pakistan today, or of course in the Caucasus between Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Armenia, not to mention China, Taiwan, and the vast Indo-Pacific region, and also, of course, the Middle East and the Near and Middle East. There are also economic or financial, monetary, energy risks threatening stability and peace in the world today. I heard about some French economists who told me, oh, stock market crash is possible today just after the commercial war that Mr. Trump is going maybe to increase. So hard trade war, in other way. There's also a risk for us, for European countries, is a demographic decrease. I think it's without populations, without our populations, our future is in danger. And especially if we are confronting, like now, to an unprecedented wave of migration, endangering the survival of our societies and even our civilization. And then, of course, there are risks linked to scientific progress, whether controlled or uncontrolled, in science. A very vast field that ranges from artificial intelligence to transhumanism, for instance. These are, on my point of view, all existential threats, more than war as a war, as a military war.
Colonel, Dr. Demkó, thank you both for your insightful discussion, and thank you all for the attention, and we highly recommend participating at other discussions as well. Thank you both. Thank you.
So, I'm sorry for my English, which is sometimes a little bit weak. Thank you.